What is up? Welcome to the Smalley Talk podcast. This is your host and rightful intro doer, Josh Rinko.
What a title.
And then I got my little sicky buddy over there on the interwebs, Chris Vaughn. What's up, bud?
I'm fine. I'll be fine. I'm gonna start sounding like RFK Jr. over here.
Dude, is that I kind of like his voice. I feel like it's
You do?
scratchy, but it's like weathered, you know?
Yeah.
I'm an RFK fan. Hopefully that doesn't kill any of our audience, but
He's got he's interesting. I mean, I definitely liked him, but he's been hit with a little bit of a scandal as of late with
I didn't hear about that.
that little vixen that he was rubbing tits with.
Oh,
You didn't hear about
and
this? He got caught up in an affair rumor. Yeah, with like a
mm,
30-year-old journalist. But
I mean, to be honest,
he's a
is that real?
Kennedy. I mean,
Is
he's a
that
Kennedy.
yeah,
What do you I mean, at
exactly.
least he hasn't murdered anyone on a sailboat, you know? So,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know,
feel
dude.
like I feel like indicting politicians for having affairs is it's a slippery slope there because I don't think any of them are living the kind of life that morally that we would really
No,
pursue. But
they're the worst people on earth. They're the
I know,
absolute worst people on earth. So, yeah, I mean, he's having an affair, big deal. I mean, you know, there are worse things, starting wars, yada yada.
yeah, yeah, those are the kind of things we're more concerned
Mhm.
about.
My
Yeah.
god, dude. I'm so ready for this whole thing to be over with too. People are just so crazy. You realize how few people are actually sane. It's wild.
I
So,
know. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Mm.
I got it. I saved this pop for the podcast here,
Oh,
so I
what do you
got to
got
do this
there,
on the
buddy?
microphone. Hang on.
It looks like
Oh
oh, you looking
yeah.
skinny, bud. I can tell you've been losing some weight.
I don't know
Don't
about that. I've been
don't take
running.
in don't take in those carbs, baby. Don't ruin that temple
Too
before you.
late. This is the second one I've had tonight. So,
What is that
uh,
one?
this
Monster
is
Fest?
this is a Three Floyds Munster Fest. So Three Floyds
Oh,
is from Munster, Indiana. It's probably the most famous Indiana
yeah.
brewery. So if you're a big IPA fan, they make Zombie Dust. It's a pretty well known IPA. But we're gonna do the old beer review here. So let me take a little sip.
While you're doing that, I'm sure I may have even talked about this on the podcast. My only interesting IPA fact. Hmm? You know why they're called IPAs?
I do, but I don't know what this joke is.
It's not a joke. It's just a fact. I
I
may have
think
already told it on the podcast. So
I'm pretty
it's
sure that's in India. That's how they would brew beer because it was cheaper method, right? Isn't that?
no, it was so when British soldiers, because it used to
Hmm.
be a colony of Great Britain, India used to be a colony of Great Britain. When they
Okay.
would serve in India, the beer would still have to be brewed in Great Britain. So they would have to brew it with like a higher alcohol content, and they'd have to brew it in the fashion of an India Pale Ale so that it didn't spoil by the time it arrived in India for them to drink. So they
That's
brewed it like this new way so it wouldn't spoil. So then when it got to India, they would drink it and it tasted different because of the
it
way they had
tasted
to
like
brew it.
shit, and they would be like, "This is terrible." And then white people
No, then they get
were like,
then when they got home from like serving for 8 years in India, they were like, I really miss that beer. And so they started calling it India Pale Ale and started brewing it for people at home too. So
I mean,
there you go.
the whole. This is not an IPA. This is a Oktoberfest style
Huh.
lager.
Well, that was
So,
all completely wasted information.
but Three Floyds makes Zombie Dust
Yeah.
is my favorite IPA, and I don't care for IPAs, um, but yeah. So I'm gonna give it. I've drank this actually this weekend, so I bought some this weekend, and I would say we're gonna go. This is 18 and a quarter. We're gonna go 18 and a quarter. So
Nice.
solid. It's not you're not breaking any records or anything, but it's a solid beer. So
It'd have been great if you just shit all over it. Like this beer
I
sucks.
think we have had some we've had some Jimmies on here before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, anyways, we've got a guest on the podcast, dude. He's actually already been on the podcast, and in
He's
fact
on our most recent
was
episode.
was on our most
Yeah.
recent episode. So uh, he's a recidivist on the podcast, a very renowned smallmouth guide and lover, Joe Raymond. Hello, Joe.
What's up, guys?
Oh man, I'm low energy as hell over here, brother. Pick
Yeah,
me
I hear you,
up.
man. I
I'm
hear
Yeah.
you.
I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
living in a damn infirmary. I got 3 sick kids. My wife's sick. I'm getting sick. It's terrible. I don't know what to do.
Joe said he was tired before the pod, so we got a drunk, we got a sick person, and a tired
Yeah.
dude trying to do a
That's
podcast.
gonna
It's a
be
great
some good
combination.
content.
We'll fight our way through it.
Yeah, man. Well, Joe, I think if anybody listened to the last episode, they'll know that Joe guides on the St. Lawrence and guides on the Susquehanna. And you said before we got on the show, you were talking about how you guided a little bit today, Joe. Where are you guiding down on the Susquehanna today?
Yep. Yeah. I pretty much
Nice.
guide. I pretty much guide every day right now. I bought a house. I am again homeowner in Pennsylvania. I bought a house earlier this year, and with being a homeowner, it sucks a lot of your money up. There's all kinds of stuff I want to do. I'm getting ready to build a big garage next to my house. So when people call to go on fishing trips, I'm not turning anybody away. I usually guide, I fill my schedule for like 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. But when I get these last minute guys that want to go out on the weekends, a lot of times I just end up doing that too. But yeah, I've been doing that full time down here for, I started my guiding business. This is our 10-year anniversary for Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides.
Wow.
Oh,
It's
congrats.
it's almost I'd have to go back. It's kind of an interesting story how I started the business, but it's almost 10 years exact from when I started the LLC.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm interested to hear your background because I don't really know your background. So give us spill the
Hey,
beans.
So
start
is that
after you finally got off the sex offender registry. Start right there. I'm just kidding.
sex offender registry?
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Go
right.
ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, I always fished the Susquehanna. I was always growing up, always into fishing, or just being around the water. It was in my blood since I was, very young. And to be honest, in my younger days, I probably didn't do as much fishing as I did turning over rocks and just wading around and, splashing around in the creeks and netting crayfish. My mom and my family tell stories of the stuff I used to do, and I just love being around water. And then, in teenage years, I got more into doing teenage stuff and kind of got out of fishing, but got real serious back into fishing in my early 20s. And just especially smallmouth fishing on the Susquehanna, once it gets into your blood, it just pretty much consumes you completely. About the time that I got completely consumed with fishing, I was in a serious relationship with a girl that I thought that I was going to be with forever, and fishing pretty much ruined it. Like, I had the perfect girl. She was a great girl, and I just neglected the hell out of her for fishing. Like, fishing is all I did, and I had a job, so I had a really good job. In construction, doing fire sprinkler installation and also plumbing. We did all prevailing wage work. I don't know, listen, you guys have that out your way? Are you familiar with that? It's like government grant work where you get paid. We weren't union, but we got paid union rates without paying union dues. We were scabs, but I made good money when I was working, but we also got long layoffs. Like over the winter, I would get laid off and I would ask for it because I just fished the whole time. I would fish every day. There was a warm water discharge where they were done. The main river could be the main river could have ice on it. And there's days I drive to this warm water discharge and there'd be 80-degree water pumping out of this thing and we'd be able to catch them on top water. Crazy, like crazy stuff. And it just completely consumed me. And you know how it goes. Back then I told myself I was never going to get a boat, and then you end up with your first boat. I think I bought my first boat in 2007. It was a little sea nymph prop boat, and the stuff we did with that boat, and that was, looking back on it, that was probably some of the most fun I had fishing, because we were just young and innocent and there was no drama. Like, it was just pure fun. This is back before, you know, even posting pictures on social media. It was just pure fun fishing out of that boat. I had that for 2 years. Then I got a little bass tracker, you know, stepped it up a little bit. It was another prop boat. And yeah, I kept spending more and more time out on the Susquehanna, and just from talking to guys, it was clear that for what I was doing, I needed a jet boat. Then I ended up getting, it was a Durcraft 1760. It had a 115/80 Yamaha on it. And that's, you know, when it just really started to take off. You know, I was able to access all that special water that I always heard the stories about.
Mhm.
And then, you know, social media was kind of taking off at the same time, and forums, and I was active on social media and forums. And it was, YouTube was taking off too. And I was kind of on the forefront of that. It would have been maybe 2011. I started making YouTube videos, just dumb fishing stuff. Some of it was like to music. I didn't pump a whole lot of content, but
Some dirt bike
I,
content too on here, bud.
yeah, I made, yeah.
Shredding snow on dirt bikes.
Did you see that? Did you see the Quadzilla? Did you see the
You got
Quadzilla videos?
yeah, dude, 3-wheeler videos. You're the same brand of white trash as I am. I like
Yes, dude,
that.
that's what I was into, man.
I also had a 3-wheeler growing up, boys.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm seeing one where you're doing donuts in the middle of a 4-way intersection out on a
Yes.
4-wheeler.
Yes, dude, that was a
Hell
Quadzilla.
yeah, baby.
That was a 90 horsepower Quadzilla 500.
You've
That
got
thing,
you've got 1.5 million views on that bitch.
yeah, that's my most viewed video. I probably should have stuck with that. If I would have stuck to just making 4-wheeler videos, I'd probably be a lot more successful by now.
How
And
great would that be?
I don't think there's as much drama involved with making 4-wheeler videos as there is fishing videos.
Dude, the alternative reality of you making just like YouTube videos of doing donuts and intersections on Quadzilla is a sick reality.
Yes, dude. I wish I could track that 4-wheeler down and buy it back. I would pay 10 grand for that 4-wheeler to have it back. I put so much time and, you know, blood and sweat and everything into that thing. You know, had the motor completely redone, and I helped do a lot of that myself. Redid everything, every bushing, bearing, everything was going over on that 4-wheeler. And
Nice.
that was pretty much the only video I have of it. Those videos I posted in, I think, 2016, but they were filmed in like 2004. They were filmed on one of those old Sony Handycams, like old school, when that first, you know, it had the little screen that flipped out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
We had so much fun doing that stuff too. But yeah, anyhow, I just, you know, I started making YouTube videos too. You know, fishing videos. That was part of this whole, you know, I guess, building this following. And, you know, this is before I got into guiding, but really what got me into guiding was I was doing a few videos, I was posting stuff online, and then I got on the list to build a rock-proof boat. And during the build process, I started posting pictures and stuff of that boat online. And there was a guy ran a guide service. He was on the Susquehanna for a small portion of the year, but he basically was like, "Hey, bud, you know, you're building that big fancy boat. Did you ever think about guiding?" And at the time, I honestly didn't like guides, and I didn't like this guy. I didn't like, because the people I fished with didn't like guides. Like, it was just like they act like assholes. They act like they own the water, and I didn't think I would ever do it. But he offered me a job, basically like, "Here, you can do some guiding and it'll help pay for your boat." And I thought, whatever, it doesn't hurt to try it. And that's really how the whole thing started. He basically sold it like he had as much guide work as I would want if I wanted to do it 2 days a month, or if I wanted to do it a couple days a week. It was there. I just had to pay him a fee every time I took his guys out. But then it turned out it wasn't at all. He basically wanted me to go out and sell my own trips and still give him $100. And he wanted all this information for like fishing reports. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, just so that ended, and I started Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides in 2014, 10 years ago, 10-year anniversary.
Nice, man.
At the time I never thought that I would actually do it full time. I was still working as a plumber, and I was making really good money as a plumber. I told myself, if I ever was going to, back then I remember thinking to myself, I need to do this plumbing thing and save enough money. I was putting a lot of money in retirement at the time. I need this, and I paid pretty much everything I had off. I just was making a lot of money and saving it, and I thought that I would do this until I was 40 or 45, and then maybe jump in, and who knows, maybe I one day guide full time. But a year or so went by. In 2016, I was working on a job, a plumbing job with a superintendent, and him and I didn't get along. And I kept getting more and more calls to do guide work. And him and I got into it to the one day, and I just walked off the job. I was like, I'm done with this. Like, I'll just sit on the bench until another job becomes available, and I'll take people fishing until that happens. I don't care. And I did plan on going back to work, but I mean, I just got busy right away with guiding, and it's like, why am I going to go back and work? I made good money, but why am I going to go back and do that when I can try this? And here I
Yeah.
am.
I mean, you're on the water every day. I think for us, like because I've thought about that possibility for sure, like a lot, like throughout my last probably 10 years or so. And I'm like, there's this, and I'm interested to hear what your like kind of take on it is. It's like, you sound like very organically you got into it because you loved fishing first. That was like, hey, I love to fish. I love to be out here. And then you sort of look at guiding, which Chris and I have done enough, like, they're not like guides, guiding, whatever, but we've like hosted people from companies and stuff that have come in here and like, hey, we're going to take you out, that sort of thing. And like that, the prospect of taking someone fishing and actually going fishing yourself, two completely different things. How similar is that for you? And have you learned to enjoy it? Like, what has it taken the joy out of it? Like, what is your like take on guiding versus just going out and fishing?
Man,
Or do you
everybody's
fish?
every I get pretty negative on it. If I told you what I really thought, like, the listeners probably wouldn't want to hear it. And I would say don't do it. I mean, absolutely don't do it. Don't do it full time. If you were going to do it, maybe do it it ruins your passion for fishing. What I do, it's a cool job, but I meet a lot of great people. I meet a lot of cool people. Sorry, I keep getting text messages. Did it block up? I
No,
meet
you're good.
I meet a lot of cool people, but the reality of, like, I remember before I guided, I wanted to take everybody fishing. I wanted to take the people fishing that I worked with. I wanted to take my family fishing. I wanted to take my boss fishing. Like, I wanted to share this with everybody because I was figuring stuff out, and like, I could go out and catch the fish. And I thought that I could take all these people out and they're going to share the same enjoyment, and it's going to be awesome. But a lot of times the reality is when you get out there and the pressure's on, and everybody has different skill levels, it doesn't always your fantasy doesn't, it's not always like, you can't turn it into reality. But some days, like, I've had awesome days guiding too. Like, the highest numbers of fish that have ever been put in my boat have been guiding. just because of, the amount of people fishing, just between two guys, and sometimes they'll have me, um, jump in and help run numbers up. But the best days I've ever had fishing have been guiding. But then there's a lot of days where it's like, holy crap, this is like it is so, people are paying a lot of money to go on these trips, and they have high expectations because of that. And there are some days where the fish are not cooperating, and the skill level of some of the people that we take out, like, they're very nice people, but you have to do everything perfect some days. And even if you do everything perfect, it's still not a guarantee that you're going to get a bite. And then that pressure weighing down on you, like, and there's times where, depending on where we're at in the lunar cycle and everything like that, where this might go on for a couple days of very, very, very tough fishing, and it wears on you mentally. Like, you can go from, it's always just ups and downs. Like, it kind of messes with you. It's hard to keep, you can get down on it, and then what usually ends up bringing you back is going out and having another good day again, and you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. We're back
Yeah,
on it again.
that's
But
interesting. You said that about the lunar cycles, though, but because I
yeah,
want you, do you think that's a pretty big driver? I mean, because guiding is a pretty unique, like, it's a unique viewpoint, because a pro fisherman, like, they're traveling around, and they're they're fishing a lot, but they travel and they go see other places. So, like, the variables could, it's a pretty wide excuse of why the fish are behaving differently. If you're
yeah,
on the same water, 5-6 days a week,
yeah.
and you see the fish, like, change, like, what have you seen as, like, the biggest variable that predicts fish behavior?
There's so much, really. I mean, water levels. If the river's running stable and nothing's changing with the water coming down, it would just be
Yeah.
the pressure systems. There's days that
Okay.
we start out and it's cloudy, overcast, foggy, and that it's low pressure and everything goes good. And then there's days where we start out and there's not a freaking cloud in the sky. You look around and it's blue everywhere. You can't find a cloud anywhere. And if the river is low and clear on those days, you're just going to struggle. I mean, it's just going to be a tough. Eventually, they do bite that day. That when you have mornings that start off like that, that usually means that that you're going to have a better evening bite. The other thing that I say is just wait. Eventually the big puffies are going to show up, and they're, what are the big puffies? And eventually, at some point in the day, the big puffy clouds are going to start showing up. And usually, when that happens, that's when it coincides with when the fish start biting better. But you can't plan for that. You don't know what it's going to happen. So you can't schedule fishing trips around it. You can't even plan your next day. I mean, you can look at the forecast, but you don't know how long that high pressure, that bluebird sky is gonna last. It's not gonna, I mean, some days it does last all day long. And I mean, you just grind, we grind and we catch them. I've never had anybody skunk, but um that's probably like the biggest variable. But lunar definitely plays something into it also. Sorry. Um, there's definitely something to that, majors and minors, but this is all stuff that you can't really plan I mean, I guess you could plan your trips. Clients could look at the lunar tables and have an idea of when they want to schedule a trip, and call me. And if I have the day open, I'll of course book it. But I don't know. I mean, it can be different. Like, there's days where, like, even in the morning, you think you're going to have a great morning bite, and then it doesn't happen. And like, everything's perfect, but something's not lined up. Something, whether it's where we're at in the lunar cycle, or there's something goofy going on with the pressure. And then you end up at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're like just ready to go home. And all of a sudden you see fish starts ringing and surfacing. And I guess that's the one thing about guiding every day that just like I don't pre-fish for guide trips. I don't pre-fish for tournaments. I don't do any of that. Like I always just fish the moment now, and guiding trains you to do that. Like you can't listen to some bullshit story from some guy from like yesterday or the day before,
Right.
whether it's true or not. I'm not, you know what I mean? You have to fish the moment. And that's, I guess, one really cool thing about guiding is the amount of information that you gather, and just the way you almost become programmed to, I don't know, just work your way through a day.
That's
And
some
you
high
know, you
level
get,
shit right there, dude.
yeah, and you get used to fishing under pressure. Like I take people from all walk, I'll take anybody, you know, but we take some really high end people out, and the first time you do something like that and you have that kind of pressure on top of you, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, it's like these people show up and because of who they are, they expect the best. They expect to catch fish all day long, and that's, I mean, depending on if they book at the right time of the year, and depending on where they book, it can be lights out. But then there's times where I don't know, it's tough.
Oh,
But the more you
yeah.
do it, you just get used to the pressure, and you just work your way through those days too. Um, you know, you have to work your way through it every day, and I'm kind of getting back into tournament fishing too. So the other thing with guiding, at least like if you do it, I've been doing it for maybe like 13 years now, but it does make it. I don't go fishing for fun anymore. Like I don't go bass fishing for fun hardly ever. I just
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I don't do it. People, my friends want me to go, my brother wants me to go, family wants me to go, and you just don't do it. But tournament fishing, and I don't do it because I feel like it's a waste of time. Like I go out, for me to go out there and catch those fish, I'm like, man, my clients could have caught these fish. Like I could have came here tomorrow morning and they could have maybe caught these fish. I don't need to be catching these fish. I don't need to do this. I've seen enough of these freaking things. But tournament fishing, like I've gotten back into that, and that totally brings it back again. Like just the competitiveness. And so if I was going to go fun fishing, I'd probably go out for an hour or two. And if the fish weren't biting, I'd be like, you know what? I have other stuff I need to do. Like I should just go home and do something else. But in tournament fishing, it you can't go back to those scales with a shit bag. Like especially, I don't know, like people, if I go to one of those tournaments, people are going to be like, he's got to throw down. And if you go back with a shit bag, like you look like an idiot, right? Um,
Mhm.
so it makes you fish. It makes me fish hard all day long, like fish my ass off. And it's fun. Like we just fished another one this past Sunday, and it was the most fun that I've had fishing. And my brother and I fished it together, and it's just we struggled pretty much all day long. We didn't have a limit of fish until the last 20 minutes. I mean,
Oh
it's
wow.
just nerves all day long. We caught a ton of fish, but they got to be 15 inches now. And we just kept catching these 12 to like 14-inch fish. And we had bigger bites, but they would get off, and I don't know. I had basically the way this happened with this past tournament is I had this harebrained idea of a spot I wanted to go check out. And I thought about going up there and fishing it on Sunday. And then I was talking to somebody about it, and they're like, they're having a tournament up there again. And I'm like, well, hell, I guess if I'm going to drive all the way up there, I might as well enter the tournament. And then I'll just run the boat to where I want to check this spot out. And that'd be awesome if it works out and I go, you know, I could win the tournament. We could do really good. So we ran 40 miles one way.
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh my.
we fished the whole way up through. We fished all the good water that I wanted to fish on the way up through, and then we ended up basically at a point where it's like, so are we actually gonna do it? Or are we gonna run up there? Or are we just gonna continue fishing around here? And I'm like, this is why I wanted to do it. So we ran up, and it was a waste. It didn't pan out. My brother ended up with a giant muskie on a glide bait,
Oh nice.
like 45 inches. We didn't land it, but it was huge. It was a big, thick one, but didn't land a single smallmouth. So then we ended up dropping back, and just basically starting back up, you know, different spots that we had fished on the way back up. And we didn't catch, I ended up pulling up to a spot that we had fished on the way up, and I missed one. I had him on and missed him, but we pulled back in and I threw in there, and right away, boom, 3-pounder. Got it in the well, threw out again, boom, 3-pounder. And my brother, dude, we caught like 12 fish. It was just like one right after another, after another, after another. And we were totally tight on time. It like when you do these, have you guys fished tournaments like that?
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
it is so freaking exciting. It's just, man, it gets me going. It gets me so amped up. I knew we didn't have a great bag. We had like 14 and a half pounds or something like that, but we had a limit. We had our bag. So
Yeah.
we got to run
It's
back to the ramp.
respectable.
Dude, we
Yeah.
had a long freaking run to go. And as soon as we started running, I was like, we're going to run out of gas probably. And he's like, ah. And we started doing the numbers and everything for how far we had to run with the time that we had left. And we calculated it out. So I was running 34 miles an hour. And we figured at 34 miles an hour, we're going to get back to the check-in. The check-in was at 3 o'clock. And if you're a minute late, if you're a second late, you're disqualified. You have to be back there and you have to drop your stick in the bucket. We had it calculated where we were going to get there at 2:58. So we're running down, and dude, it was right. Like everything was perfect. And I made the last turn, and the check-in's right there, and the boats are there, and all the people are out there. And I'm like, dude, we got this, awesome. And all of a sudden, my boat just went blue, 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 and ran out of gas. Dude, I ran out of gas, and I dumped the trolling motor, and we started trolling over. We got back. My brother ran up, and they're like, we told you this morning, this was an issue at a tournament up there like 2 weeks ago where somebody was late and they got into it and the guy got disqualified. So they were clear about it this time that you need to have your stick in the bucket at 3 o'clock or you're disqualified. My brother walked up with the stick at 3:03. I'm like, whatever. We only had 14 and a half pounds, so it's not like we're going to win. And they're like, you had 14 and a half pounds? And I'm like, yeah, we have. And they're like, you might want to watch this. So yeah, it was a little over. I think it was like 14.68 or something like that. I don't know. I mean, that was on my scale, so I don't know what it would have weighed on their scale, but it definitely ground my gears a little bit. We didn't have
You're gonna cash your check anyways.
Oh yeah, we would have paid for the tournament instead of, by the time you add everything up to fish something like that, I probably had $300 into it. It would have been nice to get my money back out of it, but
Yeah.
tournament
Especially if you're
fishing
running
is,
40 miles, that
dude,
gets a little expensive.
tournament fishing is fun. That is so exciting. Like, I'm glad that. So I got to go up above Sunbury to fish those weigh-in tournaments. You're not allowed to
Right.
fish weigh-in tournaments in this stretch of river that I guide on.
Right.
Thank God. It would. I hope they never change those regulations, but it's neat being able to go up there and do that. So
Why are you hoping that they never change that regulation?
it would change the way the river fishes for sure. Like I wouldn't want to guide that area that we fish those tournaments at up there in Sunbury. I wouldn't want to guide up there. It's too tough because of the way so many fish get moved around. I mean, so many fish get moved around. If they opened it up down here again, I mean, guys would be able to you'd be able to keep fish in season, and people would do that. Not everybody would do it, but believe it or not, there's still a lot of people that want to eat smallmouth bass. I don't understand why. I mean, you could they're not even, if you want to eat a fish, eat a flathead catfish or something like that, or eat a channel catfish. They're just as good and you get more meat off of them. They're probably easier to catch. But yeah, so I mean, if they opened it back up again, you'd have people keeping fish, and the weigh-in tournament fishing it would get overrun. There would be tournaments constantly every weekend, and probably evening tournaments, and the fish would all get jacked and moved around. I don't think it would screw things up. I don't think it would screw things up immediately. It would take maybe 2 or 3 years, but moving that many fish around is not good. I enjoy fishing tournaments every now and then, but I also don't think they're not good for a fishery. That's not a great thing to do. I think so when I do fish tournaments, it's always in cold water, fall fishing where the fish, I don't think we've ever lost a fish in a tournament. No, we've never lost a fish in a tournament, had one go belly up in a live well. But if you're fishing these tournaments over the summer or fishing tournaments around, the spawn or something like that, which you can't do in Pennsylvania, but in some states, I mean, just imagine that. It's so crazy that you can fish a tournament and go yank big fish off of beds and take them back and weigh them in. And those
That's got to be
fisheries,
so terrible for the
it's so
fishery.
bad.
Oh my
It's so
God.
bad.
They do
But
it on
I don't-
national TV, dude.
They
It's like
do it right on national TV. It's like the
and
most.
that they pay people millions of dollars or
It's the
hundreds of
most.
thousands of dollars
It's
to
the
like
most irresponsible thing you can do to your fishery, aside from keeping the fish and killing them. I mean, it is so. I think eventually weigh-in tournaments will go by the wayside. PETA or somebody will step in and say, no more
Well,
of this.
I do
Especially
think
if they
that
find out how many fish actually, if they go, like the St. Lawrence is really bad for it because of how deep the fish get caught up there. But if you hang out, if you're running the river downstream from where they release the fish at a tournament, you're gonna see a shit ton of dead ones floating down the river.
yeah, I
Big
mean,
son of
they're
a bitches.
100%. The mortality rate on those live
It's
well
so
tournaments
bad.
are pretty high, and I mean, I guess
don't they do like gentle releases now where they have like a tank or something that they put them in and like revive them for a while or something? Or am I
Yeah,
crazy?
and sometimes they
Bassmaster,
they
sure.
put them in. Sometimes they put them in tanks and actually go out and like they're not releasing them right at the dock. They'll go back out and dump them at different areas. And they say that they're doing that because it's better for the fish. But I honestly think they're doing it because it makes it harder to track how many fish are
Right.
being killed.
Well, and for here's the other thing though, even those tournaments that do that, one, you got to have a pretty large budget to be able to, finance a release program like that. But for every big national tournament, there's 15, Wednesday night derbies where, there's 30 boats and guys are, they're not taking any care with it. You got some Joe Schmo that's like smoking a cigarette, just dumping them back in the water, and half of them are floating.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to think that I know, especially in your world, Joe, the kayak guys get a lot of hate just because I think it's a weird dynamic on the Susquehanna because you
Nah,
can't
I don't
you
have.
well,
Yeah,
you can't
maybe.
put a prop boat on it, right? So
Yeah.
jet boats kind of had in my opinion, jet boats were like, dude, that was like the only people that could access it. And really, even though the Susquehanna is jet boat kind of central, I'd say the Ozarks and Susquehanna are both like, the capital of the world for jet boats, maybe Alaska. But,
Mm-hmm.
That's a fairly like high threshold to get into because those boats are like they're hard to find, they're expensive,
Yeah.
they're the skill set to drive them is pretty because I know a ton of guys that have gotten jet boats and then they're like, this isn't for me.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you
I mean,
peeing? Are you tinkling?
perhaps.
I can hear your stream, dude.
Oh no, and I got busted outside too. I walked outside.
That is a first for us.
What's that? Sorry, I'm on the phone too.
No,
There
I
we
I
walked
mean,
go.
out dude, I got totally busted. I got busted by people walking past my house.
that's a great moment, Smalley Talk history right there,
Oh my
bud.
Oh
God.
boy.
Dude, I didn't know who was talking because I have
Okay.
these earbuds in.
We should delete this.
Oh my God.
This
Is
is
this live?
evidence,
Is
dude.
this live
Joe's
right now?
Joe's back
Dude,
on the
did you hear
sex
what those
offender
guys
list.
said?
No.
Those guys out there said, "Are you the guy that caught the giant smallmouth on the Susquehanna?" I swear to God, they must have seen my dick.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, I guess what I was saying is the jet boats had rule of the land out there.
Yeah,
And then the kayak
but
fishing scene blew up, and I think it's it's one of those things where like, yeah, now instead of spending 25, 30 grand on a boat, you can go get a $1,500 kayak and get on that river,
yeah,
and it's increased pressure for you guys.
yeah,
But all that to be said, kayak tournaments, because they don't have live wells, they do the catch photo release thing. And I have fished plenty of live well tournaments.
Yeah.
So I understand the excitement of putting them in the bag and carrying them up and, weighing them and writing they write on the whiteboard and you're like, it's an exciting moment. But dude, catch photo release is just way
better,
of a conservationist way to do it. And bass boats could do it easily.
Yeah, way more better.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a more so it's a tough one. It's a more responsible way to do it, but it's just not the same. Like I wouldn't fish
tradition.
them. It's not the same. Man. It's not the same. So when you're doing a 5 fish limit and you're measuring them, everybody might measure their fish a little different, where there can be plus and minuses that over the course of 5 inches can add up to, what was the one that Christine Fisher fished in out here where she got second place? Wasn't the difference a quarter inch?
Oh yeah. I got 12th.
It was something crazy.
I was
I'm not
2 inches away from first place.
It was something crazy, a quarter inch. And then you start thinking like, and I'm not saying that he cheated or anything like that or didn't measure his fish right, but the difference there could be in how a fish is measured, where in a weigh-in scaled tournament, the numbers are the numbers. They're hard. Everybody's numbers are going to be the same as long as things are done right. Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I
would hate to get built. I would hate to get beat by. I would hate to put the time and energy and effort into one of those things and get beat by a quarter inch, and then start thinking about.
Well, I mean, but that's part of the skill set, though. I mean, when you get into those tournaments, learning how to measure your fish and maximize the length of it, like I don't leave anything on the table.
Guess as long as the thing is nosed up against the bump and I mean, I guess
there's really no, if you know what you're doing, you can get now. There's definitely that's a skill set in and of itself. It's like, okay, you can get an extra quarter inch out of certain fish, but like you can tell, like you put them on the board, if they're like 18 and a half and it's barely touching the half, like you're not going to get 18 and 3/4 out of it. So you just throw it in. But if you put it on the board and it's like almost 18 and 3/4, you're like, all right, now I'm going to let it rest for a minute, and then I'm going to put it back on.
That's definitely a much. Maybe I will get into trying to fish one of those things sometime and do that. I agree. Like it's a much more responsible way to do it. But listen, I want to tell you something. Just because those guys are going out there measuring those fish and releasing them doesn't mean that I don't see dead fish days after those tournaments. Because listen to this, and I don't know if I'm crazy. I don't know if this goes on or not, but I think sometimes these guys fishing in these kayak tournaments might catch these fish and not want to measure them right away, and they're clipping them to the side of their boat. Is this?
You can clip them to the side of your boat when you're stationary, but you can't like tow them around or
like if but how would anybody know? Like if you're on fish and you don't want to and you don't want to deal with measuring your fish right there for the picture, you want to catch or whatever. Like all I'm saying is after those kayak tournaments, I do see dead fish and they're big.
You know why you see dead fish after kayak tournaments? There's one reason. Well, two. Mag drafts and Ned rigs. That's why you see dead fish, because mag drafts with the treble hook on them, those things are not good. And I can tell you that they've become very popular over the last 2 or 3 years on the Susquehanna.
I know, dude.
Josh, you probably don't own any of those, do you?
Yeah,
I know. I own them enough to know how bad they are. You've been there, dude. You've seen.
You've probably never fished with one of those.
Maybe. No, I would agree with you on that, except for those tournaments. Like when you guys were here last time earlier in the summer, that wasn't a mag draft tournament. That wasn't. Guys weren't. I would be surprised if
it's a lot of fish tournament.
Yeah, like guys weren't killing fish on mag drafts, and I don't think guys are, killing a bunch of big fish on Ned rigs in those tournaments either. I don't know what's going on, but I do see dead fish. I mean, that's just part of having an event like that. And
Yeah, I
the
think it's
reason
just
I brought
ton
that
of
up
people
is
in the water.
I have heard that does go on, and
Yeah,
maybe that is why I see some of that. That is why I brought it up, because it gets
yeah.
on my nerves.
If they're doing that,
I
it's
don't think
absolutely not allowed.
I don't
So
know. I don't know at what level, like what numbers it would be done at, but I could see a situation where somebody, doesn't want to measure that fish right away, and
right.
it would. I don't know. I mean,
I'm sure. I mean,
maybe,
we've had a discussion about this like on the podcast. Like first, like just so like the facts are out there. Like catching fish with a metal hook isn't good for them. Like no
yeah,
matter how you like want to say it, like if we
yeah,
really like fully cared about the fish and nothing else, we wouldn't
yeah,
even fish. That's kind of the
yeah,
way, we'd leave them alone. We do fish, so there's an accepted level of brutality in fishing. I mean, the
yeah.
Susquehanna is one of the places I think you can see it the most. And while whopper ploppers don't kill fish,
Dude,
they
I was
disfigure
just
their
gonna talk
face.
about that, because when
Yeah.
that whopper plopper thing, when that little 90 first came out, and I think it was in 2014, it was wild. And I was fishing the bigger ones before that, like the 130s. The 130 and the 190 were the first ones. They were supposed to be like big fish baits,
The
musky
190
baits,
is huge, dude.
huge.
Oh my
But they were
god.
catching smallmouth on that thing too. We were catching smallmouth on the 130, catching a lot of them back in the day before the smaller ones came out. Then when that 90 came out, I was like, I gotta try this freaking thing. And it was the best bait ever. I mean, they would eat that thing all day long over the summer. And they would eat it so good, I would pull the rear treble hook off the bait, and we'd still have a very good hookup and landing ratio. They were eating it that good. And then guys started sharing whopper plopper posts all over fishing the Susquehanna page, and guys started making YouTube videos on the Susquehanna, best topwater bait ever. And it went from me being out there and like catching them to looking around at the other boats and kayaks, and everywhere you look, there's
People are
whopper
throwing them.
ploppers being thrown around. And then we started catching all these fish. They were missing eyes, blind. I
Yep.
mean, it went blind fish everywhere. And when it's low and clear, it's crazy. When that river is low and clear, you can see those blind, you can see them, and they don't spook. It's like their lateral line is extremely sensitive when the water's dirty. But when that water clears up, it's almost like they turn it off. And I can get right next to those fish. There's been times where those fish will be sitting in like 2.5 feet of water, and they're 6 feet off the side of the boat, and they have no freaking idea I'm there because I'm on their blind side. And you can throw a bait, and I'll point it out to the guys, like, look at that. There's a 19-inch smallmouth right there. It's blind in its left eye. They're like, how do you know? I'm like, because we're sitting right here and it's not spooking, and you can kind of see that fish doesn't have an eye on its left side, and you throw out and you catch it. Most of the time you can catch it if you get it over on the right side of the fish. But I mean, that whopper plopper did a lot of damage, and it drove me nuts. And to your point of the mag draft, I see the same thing going on right now with that, where I don't know why they do it. Like, I get promoting baits online if you're sponsored, like if you're obligated to do it, but other than that, I just don't know why you get online and dump all that.
Ego, dude.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it is. I don't know what it is. I don't think
That's
it's a great
exactly what it
idea.
is.
I
Yeah,
don't think
people
it's a
get up.
great I don't think
People
it's a
want
great
to.
idea because of what you're saying, dude. The guy I was talking to earlier tonight was saying about how those fish were inhaling that mag draft, and
Yeah.
like he's pulling treble, he's pulling hooks out of them deep. And I'm like, dude, you probably killed those fish. He's like,
Oh,
no,
dude.
I think they're all right. And I'm like, were they bleeding? And he's like, a little bit. And I was like, yeah, those fish swam away, but they
Dude,
probably died.
I don't
And
ever
he's
get
doing it because of and everybody's doing it now. And that's going to be the next thing that, Yeah, you
Yeah.
have a good bait that is winning in tournaments or whatever you're catching big fish on. Like, dude,
What is it
what do you?
about the mag draft though? Because like we all use like crankbaits that all have, you know,
Yeah,
treble
it
hooks
is.
on them that hang
It's
low.
how
I
they
mean,
hit it because you know what I found the mag drift. I don't dig trebles out of their throat. They come up like when I catch them. They like the hook is like in its mouth, but they got gill hook. They're bleeding, and I think what happens because it's like a big bait fish presentation. That's such a big bait. They attack it pretty violently and they swallow it, and that hook is in the belly of the fish, and it catches their gill essentially. When you set the hook, you're basically ripping it out of their gill, and then it's catching them in the mouth. That's
It's
that's
just the
what
way
it's
they.
happening.
It's just the way they eat in the fall, man. Anything they eat when they're eating that mag draft, it doesn't matter. They do eat that mag draft really well, but there's other stuff that they eat really well too, and
yeah,
they
like a
they
like a
they inhale it. They
big
inhale
swim
that
bait.
stuff. They inhale that stuff the same way.
Yeah, big
Mm.
swim bait or like a, any sort of crankbait with like a bottom hanging treble hook.
Yeah.
I don't know why would the mag draft create a bigger problem than those types of baits? I don't really understand that.
Um,
I don't
it's
know, man.
probably the treble hooks. When guys are putting treble hooks on them too. I hate treble hooks, man.
Hmm.
I don't know if everybody's doing that, but I mean they're treble hooks, and that I don't throw. There's times of the year where we do. If I'm throwing a whopper plopper, even still, most of the time I'm taking that rear treble hook off just because of the damage it does to the fish and the risk of guys hooking themselves trying to
Right.
handle the fish afterwards. Like it's just they're treble hooks. They're just nothing
But
but
to
freaking
Chris's point, though, I don't see gill hook
trouble.
fish with crankbaits, though. Like, I mean, and I
They
don't.
do. Maybe not smallmouth as much. You're right. I mean, maybe it's the way that thing folds up and they inhale it. Um,
Yeah,
That could
it
be.
has something to do with the design and
it
where
just
that
Maybe the fact
hook
that it's
is.
flexible and it's got it flexes in their mouth or something. I don't
There's
know.
times that like in the spring though where I'm digging crankbaits, like I am digging them out deep, and you're like, how the hell did this fish get this thing this deep that quick? Like it hit it, and I set the hook, and it's the rear hook's back there in its freaking throat, and then as you're trying to dig it out, the other one gets stuck in some place, and it does mess fish up. I don't like fishing baits with treble hooks because of just how hard it is on fish. In cold water, it's different though. If you're fishing in cold water, like real cold water, like jerk baits and stuff like that with treble hooks, I don't have as much trouble, I mean, you can still hook yourself, but it doesn't seem like they mess the fish up too bad. Every now and then you might have one graze it and get it in the eye or something like that, but I don't have them they're not completely choking
Mm-mm.
that. And if they are choking it, if they're eating it like head first, a lot of times it's just sideways across their face because it doesn't fold in half. But if that thing was soft, maybe you know,
Yeah.
they would probably mess fish up a lot worse. The other thing with that mag draft is, and those type of baits is a lot of times when they hit that thing, they'll hit it and they're swimming at you right away. And I think they might get a couple extra like chomps on it by the time, like you guys probably notice that, out your way and
Oh
and
yeah,
and and here too. When the fish are eating stuff like that, they hit
try
it
to
and
kill it.
but they swim at you right away. Almost every time they're swimming at you. And by the time you catch up, reeling to get your line tight and
Yeah, it's
set the
like
hook on them,
almost
he
like they're
he,
swallowing it
he
while they're
might have
getting
got
there.
that fish might have got a couple extra chomps on that bait.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's a weird thing. I will say, out of all
I
the baits I've ever used, the mag draft does the most damage.
It seems like almost every fish you catch with it, it's got like maybe not every fish, but like every third fish gets jacked
Yeah, it's like
from this
yeah,
thing.
30% of the
So,
fish. Yeah, just not good. Yeah.
yeah.
I
no.
mean, I've been using the freestyles more. So it has like the
Single
big
hook.
Yeah, you put the big EWG in it, which you don't get a good as hookup ratio with that, but you also don't gill hook them. So
Yeah.
you know,
Joe,
That is.
I became familiar with you based on your YouTube channel, like
Yeah.
years and years and years ago. I mean, this is like when Josh and I were kind of first hanging out, even like 2013, somewhere in there, 2014. You started releasing these videos of you running in your rock proof,
Yeah.
and those it was it what was the name of your boat? You had like a
Rocks.
name for it, Rockzilla.
Rockzilla. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
I remember.
That was the
Yeah.
best. I mean, I don't know what your arrangement is with Rockproof or whatever, but that was the best business decision I think they ever made because, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody who does the river thing watched those videos, and I think maybe you even
Probably.
had your boat parked on top of a rock at one point in one of the
Probably.
videos.
Probably sold him a few boats.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's wild. You saw those videos way back then.
way back then, dude,
That
everybody
was
did.
that was
Like
10
everybody
years
did.
ago.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
I actually went to your website, and there was this one. It was called Susky Magic 2016.
That was the last one that I really put a lot of energy into. That it's been that long since I've put a lot of energy into making one of those videos. Dude, those videos took so much time to make.
Or Run Guide Run. That was another
Yeah.
one, dude.
Yeah.
All of those.
That listen to
We
this.
we
So
watched all those videos.
Run Guide Run, when I made those videos, when I filmed that drone footage in Run Guide Run, basically that last scene where I'm running up through those rapids,
Hold on, I'm going to
I
share my
came
screen, Josh.
this is 10 years ago. I came off a plane, got on my phone to kind of review some footage, and I opened up my email. I don't know why I even opened up my email, but the very first thing I saw after I filmed that video was a termination notice from that guide service I was talking about.
Oh, really?
So that video, yeah, that video was kind of like, and that was one of the first videos that I put a ton of time and energy into. But once I got that termination thing, I was like, dude, now you're really gonna hit a home run with this video. Like you need to put as much time as you can into editing this thing and make it as good as you can. Like,
Now I'm gonna go watch him.
I'm. Is it? Can you see my screen right now, Josh? Am I allowed to? Am
No,
I sharing it?
I can't see it. Um,
Hmm.
while he's working on that, Joe, what?
It says I'm
Oh,
sharing it, but
I think
yeah,
I have to do
there you go.
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was definitely like I had fun doing those videos. It was fun doing those videos, but man, I
Chris, you
started.
haven't seen the Susquehanna like that, dude.
No, I
He
haven't.
No,
he's been there in like early spring. It is.
yeah,
I tried telling people like that in the summertime. That's not summertime, but
that's my buddy
in the
Tom
summertime
Mills.
when those grass islands pop up on the Susquehanna, dude, it is
Hmm.
the wildest looking place. It is
I
great.
haven't watched these videos. I haven't watched this video in probably 6 or 7 years. It's kind of crazy watching this. I can't believe I did this.
It's some of these it's some of these clips at the end when you're like running back. I remember.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
that's sick right there.
I
I
remember
put
a few of them, dude. There were a few of these videos that we watched and like.
this scene right here is when I got done reviewing this, or when I pulled my phone off the controller to look at the footage is when I opened the email and was like, all right, it's game on now. I can start my own guide service.
How many of those ledges were you bumping right there?
I don't think I hit anything. Dude, I'll have to
Hmm.
take you guys on a crazy boat ride sometime.
I would love to get
People,
on.
I'm so used
Well,
to
we've been
doing
on
it.
the boat with Randy Long. It may not be as technical as yours, but it's just as crazy. I can promise you that, dude.
Yes, but when the difference from an outboard to an inboard is
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
because I don't have anything to worry about. Randy's good at running his boat, and Randy's boat is awesome, but you still have to worry about cranking that boot, and that's always in the back of your head.
Right.
With it would blow your mind. And
broken a few of them, I have to say.
dude, it would absolutely blow your mind what that freaking boat will run through. It blows my mind. That boat runs so shallow. This is the shallowest running boat that I've had so far.
What's the boat that you have now? What give us some
it's a rock proof with
statistics?
yeah, it's a rock proof. It would be a river rocket model. What's different about this one versus my last one is we made it a foot longer. It's a 19 footer and it's got a 72-inch bottom. So it's got more wetted surface area. So when you're running, it just sits, I don't know how much higher it would sit in the water, but this one definitely runs shallower than my last one. You know, when you're talking about areas that you got to run through that are in that like 2.5 to 4 inches of water, when you start, if you can have more wetted surface area and get a little more lift, it actually does make a difference. This boat over the summer, and especially fishing those tournaments, like I really push that boat to the limit in those tournaments because I'm competing. And like, if you think you can go if you think there's fish somewhere and you think you can get there, I do it. And I am running through stuff that's, I mean, you get used to
Look
it,
at
but
that. Jeez. Look at that one, Josh.
I know. I saw it. I've seen a few of these.
Yeah, pretty crazy
Pretty cool.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
that was
the Susquehanna is such a cool place, man. I
it
mean,
is it's an awesome place. It's such a cool fishery. It's such a it's got to be one of the best, the most fun places to fish for bass in the country.
that
I
is
mean,
a really good way to describe it, though, because people don't understand. Like,
because I fish the St. Lawrence too, but the Susquehanna is more fun to fish. It is so
yes,
much more fun to fish. The St. Lawrence, what's cool about the St. Lawrence is you have the chance of catching a super tanker fish, and it's different. It's more of an electronics game fishery at this point. And just it's
Is that
a
why you
beautiful
enjoy it? Do you think
up
because
there.
is that why you enjoy it because it is just so different?
The St. Lawrence,
Yeah.
dude, I don't really even. I'm kind of over that place. It it was exciting at the beginning because of what I saw on Bassmaster and like getting sucked into the electronics thing and everything like that. But that is not where I want to guide at all, because you are staring at a screen all day long and you're telling people cast 40 feet that way, let it sink, twitch it, twitch. And oh no, you casted too far. Oh, you got to cast more to the right. Like it, and that's what that place has turned into, where you need live scope. I mean, you might be able to just wing it sometimes, but if you're guiding, and you got guys that can fish, you should really be watching that screen and telling people where to cast. And that's just not at all what I want to do. I do not want to stand up there on the front of my boat and stare at a screen all day long and
How
point
does your boat handle like that big chop and that big water?
do you still have that Phoenix?
No, I sold it.
I heard. I want you to answer this Chris's question, but I've been trying to get this question, and I heard
sorry.
a rumor.
So let me ask you this. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Josh.
I heard a rumor that the Susquehanna was like flooded, and you took your Phoenix out and tried to set a speed record on the Susquehanna and just blew up the Susquehanna. Is that true?
I don't know if that wasn't the reason I did it, but I did do it. Dude, I don't know that anybody's ever gone faster on the Susquehanna than I did. No, wait. I should at least in the areas that don't have so there are
Right.
portions of the Susquehanna that are dammed up where you can run power boats with props, but I don't know that anybody's ever ran a prop boat up through here like that. And I did do it. I put it at Montgomery's Ferry. The river, I think, was at like, it might have been at 10 feet at the Harrisburg gauge. And I put that boat in at Montgomery's Ferry and screamed it. Dude, I romped it like all the way up to almost Port Trevorton.
Oh my God,
I went all the way up through. I went all the way up through all that crazy water, all that crazy stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's like stuff that
I mean,
you would like.
I ran it
You'd
pretty.
be
I
pinching your
ran it.
butthole going up through most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff that now you can't. I mean, you can barely get a jet boat through that stuff right now. You really got to know what you're doing to get through it. But at 10 feet, it wasn't. So to anybody listening to this, don't do this. This is probably not a good idea.
Do it.
Things could have gone very wrong, but it was a lot of fun. So I took it easy on the way up. I didn't scream it on the way up. I was pretty conservative in the way I ran it, just because I wanted to make sure. And I also have my GPS running, so I was laying a track line the whole way up through, and I knew that I know where where the highest rocks are at, and I obviously steered away from that stuff. Like I know the river well enough that I knew what to steer away from. So I ran conservatively the whole way up, and we actually fished in a creek, and we caught a bunch of fish out of it, and then turned around and I was like, Tom, hold on. We're gonna rip, dude. I think we ended up going like 73 or 74 or something like that downriver. At one point, we were screaming, dude. Like, there's a
That's
video
pretty
on my
funny.
YouTube channel of it. I filmed it. If you
Oh
get on,
man,
yeah, if you get on my channel, there's a video of it. But
which would probably to most people will be like, oh, it's just a guy in a bass boat. But if you know where you're at, you'll be like, holy shit.
yeah, it was pretty wild. I don't know if the video got a whole lot of views, but it's something I always wanted to do. And real, if I would have kept that Phoenix, I don't know. I mean, it would, if the river was flooded out, I'd probably have a hard time not doing it again. But there are a lot of, I mean, you could hit a freaking floating log. I did it. You would never want to do it
Yeah, that's
while
what
the
I was
river,
thinking of.
you could, I forget how high the river had gotten, but I was as responsible about it as you could be because the river was significantly higher than what it was at that point. Like it had crested a couple days prior and it was on the way down. And most of
Yeah,
that stuff, pretty much
wasn't a ton of floating
all
stuff.
that
Yeah.
stuff was already pushed through. It might have gone up to like 15 or 16 feet or something like that. And then I got back on it when it was at like 10. And it actually wasn't even that dirty. I mean, it was dirty. You couldn't fish the main river, but it wasn't like completely blown out. You would never, ever, ever want to do that while it was cresting or shortly after the crest. You definitely have to let some
So
time
so
go
to go
by.
back to Chris's question, because I know he wants to he's thinking about buying a rock proof. He wants to know how this thing handles big water.
No,
How's that
I'm just curious.
how's that thing do on St.
It
Lawrence?
where I fish out of up there on that reservation, it works fine, but that is definitely not, that's it. That's definitely not a
You
boat that you,
are screaming.
that was on the way up. Yeah. I wasn't screaming too bad there. Dude, this is where I was hauling ass. Dude, I was hauling ass right here.
You're about one mistake away from a very impressive Darwin Award.
Yeah. But look, there's no logs or anything.
Nah, you're all right. Nah.
I don't think I saw any floating logs, to be honest. But dude, I was hammered down.
Yeah. If
That
you would
boat,
have done that with me in your boat, I'd have gotten back to the Bramp and be like,
see,
it was nice knowing you, bud.
that
Oh,
was
that's wild, dude. That's crazy. Well, anyways, there it is.
where did you hear that rumor? Did you see that video?
No, I didn't see the video. Randy may have told me somebody
Yeah.
had mentioned that, but
Yeah. So back to the rock proof question.
Yeah.
These boats, if you lived in PA or something, if you live in PA, it's the boat to have. Unless you fish tournaments where you need a glass boat,
Right.
I can fish anywhere I want to fish here, and there's many states that are like that where you know this boat, if there's rivers especially, this is the boat that you want to have. Um, but you can get away with fishing in impoundments, you know, the small flood control like Army Corps of Engineers, the
Yeah.
reservoirs and stuff that they make. And they're fast enough that you can get around and they fish great. These boats fish better than bass boats. But if you're talking about fishing rough water, it's not the boat. It will not. It's you do not want to take that out on big water.
Yeah.
You get yourself in trouble.
I
Um,
took
if
my
the
Mod V out a couple years ago on Lake Michigan, and my daughter was like, "I really want to go fishing." It's like, it looks pretty rough, hon. She's like, "I want to go." Dude, it was brutal. I mean, we lasted 5 minutes, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take you back." But I mean,
I
it
mean,
was beating you to shit, you know.
but that's
It's
the
pretty.
way that big water is, man. Like, and even if you're in a bass boat, you know, a boat with a deeper V, you know, much steeper dead rise on that Great Lake water or the St. Lawrence water, depending on where you're at, you can still get that's
Yeah.
not a big enough boat. Like you need a monster, almost chartering boat to really feel safe out there,
Right.
Yeah.
in all conditions. But I mean, if it's calm, if you watch the forecast, then you would end up with a boat like this, and you want to fish big water, you just gotta you gotta watch the forecast and
Pick your
respect it.
window. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, boys, I hate to do this to you, but I am feeling pretty sick. So
You wiped.
I think it's about time for me to jump off here. Plus, we've already gone an hour and 10
Yeah,
minutes.
I'd say we're
So
over an hour.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It was nice talking to you, man. Dude,
Yeah, you too. Next
always
time you guys come out here, maybe we can hook up.
for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
I'll be out there. I'm leaving Wednesday night.
Josh was like, "Well, funny you should mention that."
No,
I'll
I'm going
be
out with my dad, my brother, and we do a like an end of year trip. So we're headed out there, and yeah, just I mean, honestly, I haven't had even close to a bad trip out there. I mean,
Yeah,
I've had some tough days where it's like, oh yeah, the fish aren't on, but I've never not caught fish. It's a
right.
pretty unbelievable place, but I would say, Joe, if you want to plug your guide service, any sponsors you have, whatever, we usually let people do that before they
Sure.
leave. You go ahead and
Yeah,
do that.
yeah. Again, my name's Joe Raymond, and my business is Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides. And I said it earlier, but this is the 10-year anniversary for that, so we're excited about that. We're thankful for, we've been blessed with great clientele and a great place to fish. Thank you to everybody that's been a part of that. And I do have some great sponsors, and I kind of talked about that a little bit with Rockproof Boats is one that I definitely need. I feel like they make the best boat for the Susquehanna and for fishing any shallow rocky river. And just the different bait, rods and reels. I use a lot of Z-Man baits. I feel like I'm so fortunate to be hooked up with them. They make some of the best baits for catching smallmouth, and the fact that they are made out of Elastec and they don't get ripped up, that works out great. Having a bait that there's days that you could put a swim bait on, and if the guy doesn't lose it, you can fish the same swim bait all day long and catch a whole bunch of fish on it. 50 fish off of one bait. St. Croix rods. They make great rods for what we do. I fished the Legend Tour for guiding. I fished Legend Tournament rods, the blue rods.
Yep.
They revamped them. I think it was last year or it was 22, but
Yeah, I have
they're a
3 of
lot
them.
lighter.
I like
A
them a
lot,
lot.
yeah, a lot lighter than the previous version. Very sensitive. Great rods to fish with. Seagar line. We use a lot of Spro baits too. Gamakatsu hooks. But yeah, that's the deal. Um, if anybody listening wants to set up a guide trip, you can get on our website, Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides. Hit us up. My schedule is pretty filled up through 24. I know I have some availability in December. We're already booking for 2025. We got a
nice.
bunch of good guys. We got a good bunch of good guys that help us out too. We got Brandy's one of them. Chris McDonald, Tom Mills, George DeFrane. Got a new guy, Dale. He's helping out, and everybody's doing. All the guys that help me out with guiding are real good. They're proven. They're approved by me, and they're approved by just their track record with either tournament fishing or definitely solid guys.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool,
Very
man.
nice. Well, we
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on the
Yeah,
podcast and talking
yeah,
Susquehanna, talking smallmouth, man. It's always
yeah,
you're one of
yeah,
those guys out there that is at the very top of the game and
yeah. I
somebody
feel like
who I mean it's cool being
yeah,
able
I
to talk to you.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
followed you and referenced you on this podcast multiple times, so we
yeah, yeah,
respect what you're doing out there. Your river smallmouthing is, pretty niche, but it's it's the community that we're in, and it's yeah, you're one of the definitely well-known guys, so it's a cool, being able to talk with you and getting
yeah.
to know you.
I appreciate you having me on. It was great chatting, and we don't really even get into a whole lot, so maybe we'll have to do it
Yeah.
again sometime and
Yeah.
really dig in
Yeah,
dig in
repeat
a
guest,
little.
dude. That's no
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
We'll have
Next
you
episode.
Rand Demon and Joe on
Yeah.
at the same time, dude.
Oh,
That
Yeah.
Demon,
that'd
dude.
be a wild show.
Randall, dude, Randy's a hammer, man. He's one of the
Oh,
best.
yeah.
That guy
Yeah.
puts so much time out there.
We know.
Yeah.
That guy,
We know.
yeah.
He
I
texts
mean,
me every day, and
he's
it's
got a-
always some.
He's got a
He's got some kind of theory brewing in his brain.
he's got a
so.
disabling form of Bass Burgers, just like the
that's
rest
how
of us.
really before I started guiding every day. That's how I mean. That's how good this place is, you know, if you live close by it and it gets into your blood, it will consume you.
Oh, I'd
And
be a
any,
complete piece of shit if I lived near that
I
river,
mean,
dude.
yeah,
You're
I mean,
already. Hey, I got news for you,
More
bud.
of a piece
You're
of
all-
shit than I already.
You're already a complete piece of shit in our book.
oh, God.
Appreciate you, Joe. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
free the
night. Hope you
fighter.
feel better, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, get well. See ya.
Free the
Good
fighter.
night.
Bye.
Free the